Ecoholics. This is another lecture in the series of environment. This lecture definitely is going to help you in cracking your UGC NET paper 1's module of environment, and also is going to dictate some very interesting terms and some very interesting phenomena. Today we are going to learn about the concept of ecosystem. Ecosystem, ecology, these words are very known to people. We understand them, we use them on a daily basis with regards to environment. However, we fail to understand and take into notice some very important or some very imperative concepts which are going to help us not just for any examination or some theoretical concept, but they are also going to help us for life. So let's understand the concept of ecosystem. There's a very famous quote by Barry Commoner which states that the very first law of ecology is that everything is related to everything. We as Homo sapiens, or we as human beings, as a species, think and process or act in order to do various things. We have enormous capabilities, we have a productive brain and or all four limbs to do different activities, different economic activities and other things. However, we fail to understand something which is very integral to our environment and to our nature, which we are a very small part of, that everything is related to everything, which means that we have a coexistent relationship with other organisms, with other life forms. The coexistence is required because there has to be maintained a balance in the ecosystem. Only when the balance is going to be maintained, the equilibrium in the environment will be maintained, and which is very necessary for every living organism's survival, even of the human beings. And which is why we must note that the very first concept or the very first thing that we think about when we talk about ecology is that everything is related to everything. If we take an example, we always think about dependency or human beings' dependency on other human beings. Let's say, for example, the international relations or the international economics that we deal on daily basis, on yearly basis. Different economies depending upon different economies for trade, for commerce, for exchange of goods and services. But these goods and services are actually a product of the raw material or the resources which are naturally found. If that was not there, then definitely it would have been a very problematic scenario. And that part we take for granted. So which is why we must also take a note that human beings are just one species on this planet, and we depend upon different other species also. And this is why ecology or ecosystem strives to develop a coexistent relationship between all these organisms. Moving forward, we also see that the ecology or the law of ecology is actually based on the two very important concepts of law of thermodynamics. Now, of course, you might think that why physics is incorporated in something like environment. However, the laws of thermodynamics also tell us some really integral facts about the environment, about the nature, about our all existence. So which is why the two laws of thermodynamics that we usually follow to understand the pattern of ecology are the very first law, which is the law of conservation of energy. Simple to say, energy can neither be created nor be destroyed, and which is why it can be transformed from one organism to the other. If we simplistically say even more, the total quantity of energy in the system will always remain unchanged, and which is why the life forms or different organisms the energy will transform from one organism to the other, but the total quantity will not change. This is the first law of conservation of energy, and it just means that there will always be a specific another species, another organism, another such living or other organism which is going to be found, newly found, maybe a mutant species, and there will be always a particular species which will cease to exist. There was a time where dinosaurs or mammoths or different other animals used to survive on the planet, but because now the times have changed, climate has changed, different topographies have changed, and there's so many other things that have changed, and because of that, now is the time of survival of some other species. So we must always think about this law as a very important law which not just teaches us the very integration of physics and environmental studies, but it also teaches us about the existence of the various species that we look around. The second law of thermodynamics is about entropy. Now, how is it used in the concept of environment? Of course, I'm not the one to teach you physics, but the physics concept of entropy, the law of entropy over here, which is used in the law of thermodynamics, I can definitely try to incorporate it in the concept of ecology to make you understand how both of them are related. So, law of entropy basically tells about the increase in entropy. Now, what does this entropy basically mean? So, it is assumed or it is understood, observed that whenever a transaction of energy takes place or whenever a particular composition of anything takes place, there is a transformation of energy, but 100% of energy is not going to be transformed into something. So there will always be a certain amount of wastage in every stage of development. Let us take the example, a simple example of water and salt. So you put some salt in the water and you make a brine solution out of it. Now let that water evaporate. Now there will be two things out of this particular experiment. Firstly, if you just keep the salt in that water, not consumed, not touched, salt is going to crystallize. So you'll find the one thing that you'll find is salt crystals. The second thing that you'll find is that the water will start evaporating. Now this experiment shows that the salt which was in its natural form, which you dissolved, that was in a more disorderly pattern. It was more disorderly, and when you put it into the water and when it was dissolved and it was made into crystals, the crystallized salt is a more orderly pattern of that particular, of the structure of salt. However, when the water, the liquid water was poured in the jar, that was more orderly. The liquid water was more orderly, but once it evaporated into the thin air, it became more disorderly. So different of such experiments and different such activities are taken into place, and when it was observed that whenever the net amount of what happens, whether orderly functions happen or disorderly functions happen, when the net amount was taken, it was observed that more amount of disorder takes place due to any activity. In a very much more simplistic manner, if I mention about what means increase in entropy or increase in disorder, we can say that there's a natural tendency of any structure, which is, let's say, an isolated structure, to degenerate during the course of action. Take, for example, the planet. Now, there are different species which generate, different species of, let's say, grass, of mold, of mushroom, they generate, and gradually they also degenerate. So if we take the net amount of how much degeneration and generation is taking place, there will be found that more amount of, after every step of a certain activity, there will be more amount of entropy, more amount of degeneration or disorder will take place. Now this law also explains why things exist and do not exist or cease to exist. So this is the second law that we include in the environment or ecosystem. Now coming to understanding the meaning of ecosystem. An ecosystem is a biotic assemblage, something that something that is taken in collection. So it's a biotic assemblage of plants, animals, and of course microbes taken together with their physiochemical environment. Something over here is a key word, which is a physiochemical environment. Physiochemical environment relates to something that we just studied, physics correlating or integrating with environmental studies. We can't think about science separately and environment separately. So everything has a relation with everything, right? Now, physiochemical environment also would mean some abiotic environment that we're going to study in further slide. Firstly, let us understand the biotic assemblage actually is a collection of three very important parameters or factors in an ecosystem, namely the producers, the consumers, and the decomposers or the recyclers. The producers, which are also known as autotrophs, okay, the producers or the autotrophs are known as producers because they can produce their own food. Now, what are those types of organisms which are autotrophs? Plants and some bacteria which are capable of producing their own food by assuring photosynthesis, or even there are some which do not survive through photosynthesis but some other type of chemical synthesis. Such type of organisms are producers. Then we have the consumers. Consumers are then all the other organisms which cannot produce their own food. So animals that obtain their energy and protein directly from feeding on other animals or grazing or basically using autotrophs to survive, that would become the concept of consumers. And there are also decomposers, recyclers, okay. These are the various types of fungi, bacteria which decompose the organic matter, and they are going to survive through that particular process by decomposing the different type of organic matter that they are going to eat, and they are going to survive through that. So that becomes the three major forms or factors of the ecosystem: autotrophs, consumers, and decomposers. Now, looking at the structure of ecosystem, it's a very fine structure of ecosystem. Many times it's asked in different MCQ type of questions also. There are two types of components, the abiotic components and the biotic components. Biotic components, of course, which are supported by life, and abiotic components are the all other inorganic components that exist. Now, abiotic components are very, very important because they decide the physiochemical environment of any organism or any biotic component. So both of them are very important, and the balance of both of them will definitely decide the healthy ecosystem, the healthy type of ecosystem. Now, in abiotic components we have two types, climatic and edaphic. Edaphic meaning which something related to soil or anything related to soil would conclude edaphic component, okay. So there are some type of climatic abiotic components like rain, precipitation, then light or solar energy, wind energy, and temperature. While in the edaphic components we have soil itself, then the pH level of the soil, how saline the soil is, or how the soil fertility is, then minerals that are found in the soil, and then the topography. Topography basically is the study of the relief features on a map. Where are the rivers? Where are the mountains? Where are the plateaus? Where are the plains? When we ideally identify on a map what are the relief features and where are they situated, we technically are talking about the topography, right? So these are all the abiotic components. And then we have the biotic components where we have autotrophs or the producers, heterotrophs or the different type of consumers, and saprotrophs or saprophytes, which are basically the decomposers. So they are known as saprotrophs or saprophytes. Okay. In consumers, we already know that there are variety of consumers or variety of heterotrophs, herbivores or carnivores. Then there are large carnivores which are going to feed on the smaller carnivores. Then there are omnivores which are going to be both herbivore and carnivore, and parasites which feed on other organisms. So this is a major structure of the ecosystem. Now, finally, what are the functions of ecosystem? We need to understand, we have understood the structure and the concept, but why are we so much talking about the ecosystem? The very idea or the major characteristic of an ecosystem is that it helps in cycling of the various nutrients which are found in the abiotic region or in the abiotic circumstances, and ecosystem also helps in finding a right balance or striking a right balance between the abiotic and the biotic component. Secondly, regulation of the whole organic inorganic scenario in the environment. So it regulates the essential ecological processes. Regulation is very important. Everyone understands the concept of regulation, supervision, control. Ecosystem is such regulator which is going to balance out or even out all the various problems, issues that are created, and all the things that are good in the nature, in the environment on the planet. So regulation again is very important. Regulation is also very important to maintain stability and equilibrium in the ecosystem. Then thirdly, of course, balance among various trophic levels, and every ecosystem has a carrying capacity. Now, carrying capacity is a very important term. It can be used in various exams also. Carrying capacity is the minimum capacity that, or not the minimum, but actually the overall capacity or the total capacity that a particular planet or a particular area or a particular system can hold. So just to take an example, you have a bag. Imagine that you are in a school or a college and you have a bag. Now in that bag you can carry some stuff. So you can carry books, you can carry calculators, you can carry a different bottle and different other things. You can carry your phone, and that bag has a carrying capacity. Now we of course have faced the situation that after a point of time, after overusing that particular bag, the strap of a bag is either going to go away or it's just going to break. Why does it break? Because you have overused that bag, or you have filled that bag a lot, which is more than its carrying capacity. So which is why the concept of carrying capacity is very important, because we, through various anthropogenic activities, through various human activities, over-exploit the planet, and due to overpopulation of different species, due to over-exploitation, and due to giving pressure on the ecosystem, carrying capacity of the ecosystem is going to face some issues, and the ecosystem will have to regulate it through various checks, and those checks and balances will be very harsh for different species. So which is why carrying capacity is something that has to be taken a note about. And finally, the abiotic components help in the synthesis of organic components that involve the exchange of energy. In the future videos, we learn about the various pyramids and the transformation of energy as well. So, which is why we will understand why and how abiotic components play a very crucial role in maintaining the physiochemical balance and physiochemical environment for the different organisms. So this was it about the different concepts of ecosystem. We will also learn about the different types of ecosystems and other parts of ecosystems in the future lectures. Till then, keep liking and sharing our videos and keep subscribing to Ecoholics.